Webinar. I'm Sue Richards. I'm currently a board member of the nominated individual with Colne Valley Co-op. Veronica is going to look after the technology. So do you want to just do the housekeeping, Veronica?
Yes, let's do that. So I've pressed recording now, if that's okay, and if people want to sort of bear in mind, I don't expecting anything wild happening, and if anything does, then if people have hindsight moments, we can always come back to the recording. But we're planning to put it on the website so that others who are not able to be with us today can watch it backwards. We'll try and keep people on mute as well, if you want to try and keep an eye on it, just so that we sort of allow for the speakers to have sort of space and sort of clear in terms of the sound. And I think that's it. And then, yeah, please share in the chat if you want to do introductions to one another. We'll be keeping an eye on our questions. And also there's lots of wisdom in the room. So if people want to sort of answer questions which we might sort of miss, or if anything sort of is there which is interesting, please do be engaged in there. So yeah, I think that's it really.
I think it'd be funny we have a Jackie Weaver moment in the webinar, but I'm not planning it. Somebody shouts she's chucked him out, Gary. She's thrown him out, Gary, at some point. But I don't think it'll be that contentious. Right, so I've introduced myself. So this webinar is Great Care is Possible, and that's a fantastic, fantastic sentiment. We want to help each other explore different models of care. It's our second webinar. The first one, as I was saying, was very productive. I certainly got a lot of ideas from it. Veronica, as she says, will keep an eye on the chat and obviously try and share ideas amongst each other. We've got three great speakers tonight, and having had a look at some of the things that I'm hoping they'll be able to share with us tonight, such a lot of interesting and rich experience there. Sian Lockwood is the Chief Exec of Community Catalyst. John Roberts, I'm hoping I'm getting your title, the Chief Exec of Northwest Care Co-op, and Adrian Roper, again, Chief Exec of the Welsh Care Co-op. So we've got quite a variety of experience. So I think Sian's going to go first. Am I right, Sian?
Yes, yes, I will.
Yeah, so just looking a little bit about Sian. Vast experience of working with people with a wide range of partners, supporting people to live the life they want, focusing on what they bring and contribute and not just what they need. So we're going to have 10 minutes for each one of the speakers, and we will keep the questions until all the speakers have been, if you possibly can. Although if you've got questions for on the chat, I think that's okay to do that then.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm really pleased to be with you. I've loved the Colne Valley Co-op from afar for quite a long time, and Veronica and I have talked a few times. So it's just lovely to be with you. I'm going to share my screen. I have got a little, you can see it. Oh no, you can't see it because I haven't said share. There we go. You see it? Yes?
Yeah, that's great.
I can't see you, so and I've just done. I'll do it as a proper slideshow. But it's really for me to keep on track and make sure I tell you in 10 minutes as much as I possibly can about some of what we do. So I've called it Supporting Community Microenterprise. That's a bit of jargon, really. It's talking about, we talk about supporting local people in local communities to set up enterprises that help other local people. And I'll talk a little bit more about, and we call them community microenterprise because they're led by community members and they're very small, basically. So this is us. We are a community interest company. We were established in 2010. We work across the UK. We're capacity building, so we work through local partners and we build on what's strong and good in local communities and aim to leave really long-lasting legacy behind us. We were driven as our chair said. I've immediately forgotten your name. I really apologise. as our chair said, we were driven initially by a desire to make sure that people, wherever they live, have got real choice of great services. When we set ourselves up, something called personalisation was becoming a big thing, where people were supposed to be able to have the money rather than the service, and be able to direct how that money was used to buy the kinds of services they want, and at the same time, the diversity of services were diminishing because the world of regulation, legislation and bureaucracy was becoming so complex. And so we were driven, we had developed and tested a model of support for local enterprise, which had worked really well. And we set ourselves up to try and reverse that trend, really, of bigger and bigger services that were less and less personalised to enabling great local choice. But we became equally driven as we went on by the untapped talent and gift and imagination of people in communities, and that became an equal passion for us. So since 2010, we've worked in over 100 areas, 51 of them supporting community microenterprise. We've supported nearly 4,500 community enterprises, 28,000 people have benefited, and about 9,000 jobs have created, including the job of the entrepreneur. So I suppose the approach to community microenterprise development that we use is not rocket science, not remotely rocket science. We employ somebody local. We call them a catalyst because that's their job, to catalyze activity, not direct it. We find out what's needed in the area. We do a lot of liaison with public bodies, and our catalyst is embedded in local communities and works through the strengths and energies of that community to find the people who will respond to the needs of other people in that community. We do as much work these days with the public body to help them understand what needs to change. Culture gets in the way a lot. There's a lot of resistance to referring, to telling people about enterprises that don't look like a traditional enterprise. There's lots of systems barriers as well about, for example, how people are able to use direct payments. So we do a lot of work with the public body that we work with, and our catalyst, once they have started working with local people wanting to set up enterprise, are really no more than a patient coach. We bring central expertise, ANARAC expertise, about how you help really small stuff negotiate legislation, regulation, bureaucracies. Our catalyst is there to walk alongside the entrepreneur on their journey, referring them where they need to more experts who are great at business planning or payroll or training, but always being there so that when people come back, not having fitted whatever it is that the business planner is doing or whatever it is, they're there and they can regroup and start again. And our aim is to enable people to set up enterprises that are legally compliant with very complex legislation around health and social care, are very personalised and are sustainable. Because when we first set up, we were aware of lots of little enterprises that kind of blossomed and then immediately withered. And that's not great for the entrepreneur, the person running the enterprise, but it's also really bad for the people who are being supported by them. So sustainability matters a lot to us. I've only got 10 minutes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about part of what we do. I have we support enterprises who do all sorts of things, because people in communities need all sorts of things. But I thought I would particularly talk today about helping people stay at home, because that's what you guys want to do as well. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about some work we've been doing in Somerset. That work is being repeated in many other areas of the country, but Somerset was our first. So Somerset story. We for most of our early contracts, we were being commissioned to help local areas enable choice for people, choice of all sorts of stuff, day support, friendship groups, peer support groups, activities, all sorts of things. But it was in Somerset 6 years ago that we were asked to support something really much more specific, which were enterprises that would help people stay at home. The problem Somerset had, it's very rural. It has a very high proportion of older people, people over the age of 80, and traditional home care services were not able to offer services in those most rural parts of the area. For them, it was uneconomic. They couldn't recruit locally. They weren't able to. The travel costs were too great. Most of the traditional home care services weren't paying travel time, which is partly why they couldn't recruit. And so because of that, people were being delayed coming out of hospital and were going far too early into residential care just because they couldn't get the support they needed to stay at home. So we have employed a local catalyst, wonderfully talented young man called Reese, and he has been there for 6 years now. After 4 years, we were able to talk about 425 enterprises over West and South Somerset, the most rural parts of that county, 362 of them brand new, 1,500 people helped to stay at home, and 12,000 hours of care provided. That has increased dramatically over the last 2 years. So after 6 years, I don't have the up-to-date stats, which is why I haven't provided them, but we've got over 800 enterprises, with more coming. It's a bit of an exponential curve. So we work really, really hard for about a year, and it takes time to find people. But once people begin to offer services which they really value, that are very valued by the people receiving them, they're working in a way they really want to work, other people look at that and think, I could do that. And so what you get is an exponential curve, a curve that starts where it starts to get more and more people get attracted because of the quality of what people are doing, but also the way of working, which really suits people's lives. So, and in Somerset, 58% of them offered personal care services, including quite complex care. And the remaining 42% were offering home help type services, so cleaning, shopping, odd jobs, those kinds of things. I need to say, if my slide doesn't tell me, that most of these enterprises were working as sole traders, so individuals delivering the service. And there is a very narrow line they tread. So they are self-employed, they set their own fees, they have the option of turning down work if they don't want to do it. For some people, this is a really flexible way of working. And they are also unregulated by the Care Quality Commission, because there's an exemption which enables people who are working as sole traders, delivering the service themselves, to remain unregulated. And in fact, the Care Quality Commission don't want to regulate them because the cost of the regulator would be too high. That isn't a perfect position for us, because it keeps the enterprises artificially small. Because if they get a bit bigger, if they take on a member of staff, if they go into partnership with another enterprise, then they have to be regulated as a domiciliary care service with all that that entails, and you know that better than anybody. We're doing quite a lot of work nationally to try and find a different way that would allow our enterprises to grow a bit, and to work in greater collaboration with the Care Quality Commission. So their impact in Somerset, well, older people were able to stay at home and were being supported by people from their neighbourhood, and were being enabled. It wasn't a requirement, but a kind of secondary consequence of being supported by somebody from your locality is that you share gossip, and people reconnect with community activity and are supported to do that. Because if people go to the same church, or they all enjoy the village fete, or they like the village pub, then those kinds of activities we found just grew alongside the direct care that people were provided.
John, I'm hesitating to follow you up because I'm absolutely fascinated by what you're saying. But
too much, aren't I? I'll say two things then. They work locally in ways that suit them, and they earn a decent income, and that's really important. And I won't say anything else on that slide. New workforce, need to say that very quickly. 38% of them have no formal experience. This is a new group of people that have not worked in care before, and others have worked in care, often in domiciliary care, and are wanting to work differently. And if they hadn't had this channel, they would have left care altogether. And that's me. There you are.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I've talked to you.
no, it's absolutely fine, Sian. I think sometimes we try and squeeze an awful lot in, and people who are passionate about things and have a lot to share really have a lot to inform us. I'll move swiftly on. John Roberts, if he's as informative as he was when I spoke to him today, we're in for a great 10 minutes, from North West Care Co-op. I think it's about 4 years now of a long history of working in this area and other areas, but about 4 years into this particular enterprise. What resonated for me was the phrase wanting to change a life well cared for to a life well lived. I think that resonates in terms of my experience and also our aspirations for the people in Colne Valley. So over to you, John.
Thank you very much. And I'll start sharing the screen if I can. Hopefully you can see it now. Could somebody wave if they can see it?
Yeah, it's great. We can see, John. Thank you.
Brilliant. Okay. So thank you very much, Sue. My name is John Roberts, and I am the Chief Executive Officer, the Registered Manager, the Chief Cook and Bottle Washer, Dog Walker, etc., all things considered, for North West Care Cooperative. And we are a micro-enterprise of the sort that Sian supports through Community Catalysts. And we've been around since January 2018, and we began as a research project sponsored and funded through the Community Fund by Disability Research into Independent Living and Learning, whose purpose was to test and research alternative models of care. And because it was set up by 4 disabled people's user organisations in the Northwest who bid for the money in the first place, they were very concerned that those models of care put the user at the heart of the service, and decided that we would try with a cooperative model. So in answering the kind of questions that were the script really for the presentation, then we set up as we did, largely because of that, because we were driven by the bid that was built around these 4 disabled people's user-led organisations. And I think interestingly enough, that means that we had organisations that didn't have a long history of cooperative working or within cooperative movements, weren't entirely and totally within social care. They were interested in kind of advocacy for disabled people and disabled people's rights and a whole range of other things, getting people into employment, tackling hate crime is some of the things that the organisations did. And so we very much came into the thing and the sort of sector in a fairly sort of project-based entrepreneurial way. And our approach was to kind of set up as a business startup. I think critically, the way originally our legal advice suggested we should set up was form a thing called Northwest Care Cooperatives, which would be a top company incorporated in law, and where the regulatory responsibility would be held, and that would oversee or supervise a number of small care cooperatives, which would employ the personal assistants that they use within them. As we had pre-registration discussions with CQC, we changed that model because CQC felt that having employers or employees rather in one part of the structure and the regulatory responsibility in another part of the structure wouldn't work, and essentially they needed to be in the same place. So we turned our model upside down and we created a service company called Northwest Care Cooperatives that provides services to what is currently one unincorporated care cooperative, and they are our customer and we provide services to them. And then I think the next critical thing about why we're set up as where we did, we have 20 people or thereabouts in our care cooperative, and most of the user members within that care cooperative, and we have three types of member. We have user members who receive services, employee members who provide the services, and supporting members who carry out some kind of supporting function. And in this case, they generally tend to be the mums of our user members who age ranges between 20 and 40, but they are generally individuals with learning disabilities. And we went down that route because our first 3 or 4 people who were willing to set up a care cooperative with us were families, mums who had children with learning disabilities. In terms of advantages and disadvantages of how we set up and why we set up, 3 principal advantages. It was a short flash to bang time. We moved from getting some money for a project in January 18 to being incorporated at Companies House as a not-for-profit company, a company limited by guarantee without shareholders, being registered by the CQC and setting up and ready to run as a business, registered with HMRC, etc., all within 18 months. So we had a very quick flash to bang time before we were actually trading just 18 months after starting. What that also meant, and is an advantage, is that we kind of learned as we went along. We learned in the work. We did by practice. Our research project wasn't a lot of surveys and a lot of papers written and all that kind of stuff. It was getting into the work and trying things out. So we have learned through practice, and actually I think that's been quite a powerful learning tool for us. And critically, because we're learning through practice, the direction of travel for us is being shaped by the people who are using our services. So we have genuinely maintained that sort of aim of being very much user-led. The disadvantages, I suppose I should say, is all of those 3 things, actually. The short flash to bang time means that, there's a lot of stuff we haven't done. We haven't sort of marketed it as widely as we perhaps could have done. The learning in the work means that we've been very cheap and very lean and we've been very effective, but it also means that we haven't necessarily been able to step back at times and invest in sort of project pieces of work to support the business. We kind of do that as we go along, and those are our challenges as well. In terms of our best wins, well, the thing that I think we've learned the most about this is that what we've got is something that's a lot more than about just providing care. It is a community that cares about each other. Everyone in it cares about each other. And, that's the way we see this going in the future. And we have a future vision that is more about just somebody turning up for an hour and providing some personal care or taking somebody out, to provide some social care, and a community that actually supports people to live and grow and develop and try different things and volunteer and get into employment. And in some cases, and a key theme of some of our supporting members, is maybe some kind of trust arrangement to support their user members after those supporting members are gone. So something that outlives them. There's a clear social benefit to what we do, not only outside the cooperative, but within the cooperative. And what is very apparent is how much our user members enjoy linking up and joining together and doing activities together. Less of that, obviously, during COVID, but it's amazing how much we've been able to do online and digitally during that period. And it's also struck me how people who receive individual direct payment packages have become far more sociable and got involved socially with other groups within the cooperative, and that's been a really, really powerful bit of learning. So as Sue explained, it's so much more than just simply providing care, and it's very much been about living life well. In terms of the biggest barriers, well, there are three really that we faced. The first is that we are what I would describe as an asset-based sapling in a deficit-based forest. And what I mean by that is we are in a care environment where even good ideas like this will still struggle to get oxygen and get sunlight amidst all the existing structures, old ways of doing things, old, not always very good way of doing things that dominate the environment, that sort of draw the sunlight and draw the water out of the ground, if you want to put it that way. So it is always a struggle to find our little gap amongst the canopy where we can get sun and we can grow. But I think if you're small enough, you can kind of grow up between the big trees, and that's very much been our approach. The second barrier really is the old saying that some of those who oppose you are not always your enemies. And the truth is that well, there's a couple of experiences we've had where there have been discussions about developing with others outside our footprint in other local authority areas or whatever, and maybe trying to take on what we do. And people have talked about the need to do things properly. And what you kind of understand by that expression is do things the way they've always been done. And of course, if you do things the way they've always been done, you'll get what you've always got. And those are people who are generally in favour of the kind of work that we've done, but they're still limited in some ways by doing things the way that they've always been done. And I can think of a couple of examples, and I'm not going to kind of name them and shame them, but if doing what you've always done means you're still, after 3 or 4 years, still tinkering around thinking about how you're going to do this, then actually is it not good to do it differently and get something started and actually providing something for people within 18 months. And then the final sort of the three barriers is that people need to understand that they don't get something for nothing within a small micro enterprise. And there is a side of the market which is really much where, if you like, people who have been providing support, perhaps within the family context, have actually been taken advantage of by those who are paying them to do that. And we've come across some experience of that a little bit. And it's important that our ethics are strong and that people are paid appropriately, and so on and so forth. So finally, and I will rattle through this because I know my time is up, in terms of top tips, really, the things that I would recommend if you were about to kind of take part in this great adventure is three things, really. The first is, I think you need to know your why. You need to really understand why it is that you're doing what you're choosing to do. And actually providing care, for me, isn't enough of a definition. We recognise that our why is about helping people live life well, and it takes you to a much greater place than simply somebody turning up, if you like, to wipe a backside or get somebody dressed, you know, in a half-hour session and then disappear to do something else. I think the second thing I would say is we've kind of coined a term for it within our board really over the years, which is we describe as being ballsy, which means go out there and challenge stuff. It's the old Bobby Kennedy line, really. Don't look at what is and ask why, look at what could be and ask why not. And consistently carry on politely and firmly asking why not. And finally, I would say within a cooperative environment, it's an old lesson from another kind of era, it's almost a leadership lesson really, which is delegate cooperatively as much as you dare. And then when you've done that, delegate some more, which really is that use the cooperative kind of aspect of it to really spread the leadership, spread the responsibility, and kind of spread the capacity. And I think we're on a journey where we're still trying to do that. We haven't done it fully yet, but that's definitely the way to go to develop the concept. So there we go. Rush through it a little bit, I'm afraid, but there's Northwest Care Cooperative for you.
Thank you, John. That was absolutely brilliant, and hopefully we'll have a fair bit of time in order to cover questions. That was absolutely brilliant and quite inspirational. Our next speaker is Adrian Roper. I think I get the title right, Chief Executive of Welsh Care Co-op. They have a focus on doing things with and not for people, a passion for transforming care, an enthusiasm for the cooperative model, and coupled with quite a lengthy experience of making it happen. I think there'll be a lot of learning for us from Adrian. So I'll pass over to you, Adrian.
Right, let me get my screen set up with a bit of luck. And okay, yeah. So yeah, I sort of come from a different place, not just Wales, but from a very large care providing organisation, and we're trying to become a cooperative as a transformation of a large existing organisation rather than growing up from the grassroots. So it's a completely different sort of journey from what we've been hearing about, but I think there's an awful lot of potential, certainly potential learning from us, from the small, because we very much value the reality of engagement and power holding at that local small level. So that's a sort of a direction of travel for us. Anyway, let me not rattle on regardless, because my 10 minutes have run out. I'm going to talk about what the change from a charity, why the change was made, what the new model of governance entails, what impact it's had, some thoughts on COVID, and a quick answer to the question, should other charities do the same? So let me tell you about Cartrefi Cymru. Sorry, I ought to just digress and say we're not called the Wales Care Co-op. There isn't anybody called the Wales Care Co-op, but we are a Wales Care Co-op. Our full title is Cartrefi Cymru Cooperative, and that means Homes of Wales Cooperative. Although we don't own homes, we provide care. Anyway, end of digression. Established as a charity in 1989, purpose was to enable people with learning disabilities in Wales to live decent lives as independently as possible in the community. The main focus was on supporting people to live as tenants in their own homes, but it also provided support to people living with their families. It proved to be a much needed service, and we grew quickly into one of the largest care providers in Wales, a position that we continue to hold.
Adrian, we shared some slides because we can't see them.
You can't see the slides?
No.
At all?
Sorry.
Sorry, let me try and do something there. It says I'm screen sharing. I'll stop share and start again. And I've got a frog in my throat as well. Right, can you see that? No, I know. I'm going to press the share button. There we are. That should do it.
That's done it.
Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So where am I? I'm current slide. So I was telling you about Cartrefi Cymru, all right, and where I got to. So much needed service, one of the largest care providers in Wales, 1,200 employees working in 16 local authority areas. You might say I would say this, but in my view, it's true. From the get-go, we were committed to providing the highest quality of care and support on a person-centered basis. Valuing individuality, inclusion, independence, and certainly, aspiring far beyond, basic care provision. It was whole life support. But in Wales, I think in England you had your own Care Act. We had our own Care Act in Wales, and in the run up to that, there was a new agenda that was surfaced for care and support services that challenged even the best providers to do better. And that new agenda was, the jargon term about co-production, an approach to service delivery and design which sought to transform the relationships between givers and receivers so that all participants were valued as contributors, with assets to be mobilised and power to be shared on both sides of the relationship. The new approach is intended not to just increase the probability of a care service being as effective as possible for its end users, because they have a real say about what they receive, but also to increase the capacity of the care system by recognising users and families and their community connections as sources of self-help and peer-to-peer support. And the quote I've given you there about the definition of a co-production, you have probably read by now, but it's about working with, as you've heard, about equality of relationship between partners and practitioners, people and practitioners, and also about thinking beyond just, paid for assets being delivered, but about strengthening the local core economy where people are bringing their own assets to the table and helping each other. So, in light of this new transformative agenda for social care, we began to reflect on the implications for our governance and identity. The traditional charity model is based on a top-down benevolence model, whereas in contrast, the cooperative tradition, as we began to discover, was about equals coming together for collective self-help. And with the help from some active cooperators in Wales who were of a view that the cooperative movement and the cooperative model had something to offer care, we were able to identify inspirational examples of care co-ops in other countries. And, we discovered some were worker co-ops that excluded the people being supported, some were consumer co-ops that excluded the workforce. Neither of those things were ringing our bells. But we also discovered the growth of a new model, the multi-stakeholder model. And we decided that that was clearly the best model for building co-production into our governance. It meant we could value both workers and service users, and as we've heard from the Northwest, a third membership category of community supporters, allowing families, friends, and other activists in communities to come into the tent as well. And in 2016, we made the leap. We brought in solicitors with a track record of working with the cooperative sector. Anthony Collins, you may have heard of them. I noticed that Cliff Mills, one of their associates, is with us tonight. Hello, Cliff. And they were great. They helped us draw up new articles of association that turned us into a cooperative democratic membership organisation. And actually the formal transition proved to be quite straightforward, not least because Anthony Collins were able to help able to show us that it was possible to make the change into being a cooperative without deregistering as a charity or company limited by guarantee, which would have been quite sizable obstacles for us. And who knows, we may never have made the leap. The key changes from our previous model of governance are that the people we support, our employees and community supporters, are now all able to become voting members with elected representatives who sit on what we call the Council of Members, that actually is the body that appoints our Board of Trustees. As well as running the organisation competently as a charity and a business, the board is required in our constitution to advance the cooperative principles in respect of the company. And a quick run through the principles for those who don't know them: voluntary and open membership, democratic member control, member economic participation, autonomy and independence, education, training and information, cooperation among cooperatives, and concern for the community. As a consequence of these changes, we have gone from being an organisation in which our only members were a small group of trustees to being one with 600 members. We have a board appointment process which ensures new trustees understand the value and status of the stakeholders to whom they are accountable. We have regular engagement between senior officers, trustees and stakeholder representatives who surface their lived experience, ask probing questions and engage in discussions about the issues we face and our plans to address them. We've also, which brings me back to that sort of local is the most real matter, we have created local co-op forums to enable wider membership participation, and we particularly are focused on Principle 7, concern for community. So we no longer just see ourselves as a provider of care and support to a group of people in need, but as a community building organisation in which the giving to the community is done as much by the people we support as by the workforce. Activities are identified and agreed at the forum and then followed through. Some examples: shopping for elderly neighbours, raising funds for a women's refuge, improving accessibility to local allotment, choir singing at a care home, running a weekly social night, organising plastic recycling project. These are all some of the things, as I say, that our members have done. And there are multiple benefits for the members themselves, for the community in which they live, and for our reputation as an organisation that is adding social value. At an individual level, many employees and people we support have found both pleasure and enhanced esteem from becoming active members, taking part in elections, co-organising community building activities, and having an insight and a say about what is done at the highest level. A few quotes. Michelle said, becoming a co-op is important because it gives me more say about how I'm supported. Another person we said, Robert, said, I like being co-chair of my local co-op forum and meeting senior managers. A support worker said, it's good to be able to hear from senior managers about what they are doing to influence the funding of social care. And a community supporter said, I feel like I can play an important role in asking challenging questions, which I think, just reflecting on that, there is a joyful independence about the community supporter role, who can perhaps ask more challenging questions than employees or people being supported might feel confident to do. And David certainly does. Anyway, it's also worth flagging up the benefit to be gained from adopting cooperation as a spur towards interagency collaboration. Principle 6, encouraging cooperation with other cooperatives, has led to us developing a strong partnership relationship with the Wales Cooperative Centre that enables us to benefit from their social business expertise whilst we assist them with our social care expertise. And we're learning from Like Tonight and sharing with other new social care co-ops in the UK, and with housing mutuals too, from Merthyr to Rochdale. So cooperation with the small C is an approach that stretches beyond the confines of formally identified co-ops and mutuals. But becoming a cooperative with a capital C brings you into a movement where interagency sharing and support is the expectation, and in our experience, the reality. In terms of challenges, it's still early days. 3 years, it might seem long to some, but it's actually not a long time in terms of achieving a deep change of culture and processes within a large or medium to large organisation, especially when it's spread across a mountainous country like Wales. And we also have a lot of business as usual obligations, care contracts, care regulations, and the like. And there are also challenges to member engagement when our key stakeholder group has significant learning disabilities. And another key
Just
group.
mindful of time, because we did agree to have half an hour. So
okay, sorry, I thought I'd run through this and it came to 10 minutes. So I've added digressions.
It's just there's an awful lot to cover, and we're really liking it. But we did want to leave half an hour so people can ask you questions.
Yeah. Okay, so I was just talking about China. So I won't bang on about COVID. I think you all know it would represent difficulties and a slowed up frontline engagement. But we're confident that being a multi-stakeholder co-op is actually going to be a strength coming out of COVID in ways I won't iterate now. I'll just very quickly finish with my final slide, which is, should other charities make the change? And the answer is, folks, yes. Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you. That's been great. Really, really interesting. I've been noting things down, even though we're going to have this recorded. But I hope other people have got as much out of that as I have.